the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets from New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Hot Stove Live with 3/4 of the Mets Roundtable. We got Chris, we got Hayden, we got myself. Unfortunately, Nelson couldn't join us because Nelson turns 21 today and is allowed to have a beer. So happy birthday goes out to Nelson. So make sure, guys, when you subscribe to his channel, because you got to do that, give him a shout out, happy birthday for him. So he's enjoying his time with his family, and we wish him a happy birthday. But we are here to talk about the team that we love to hate, and that is the New York Mets. We're going to say what up to everybody, and then we're going to get right into the rundown that you see on the screen. Chris, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
What up, Rob? I appreciate you hosting this. The channel's almost at 300 subscribers. I would thoroughly appreciate everyone subscribing. Get me there before the new year. Here to talk about all things Mets. Happy birthday, first and foremost, to Nelson. Missing him on tonight's live stream, but he'll be back in no time. Interstate Mets Roundtable, True Mets Talk podcast on the table. I thoroughly appreciate it. Like I said, a lot of things to get into tonight. We'll get into it. We'll hit on everything. And shout out the chat, everyone tuning in. I definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Subscribe to Chris's channel, and Hayden's back. So say what up to Hayden. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, what's going on, everyone? Good to be here. Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. Yeah, hopefully, like I said, most of you guys know us pretty well now, so hopefully that's a good thing. Yeah, Mets content, news, analysis, live streams, all that great stuff. I uploaded a video this afternoon in regards to the Mets trade of Hauser and Taylor, which we'll talk about in a couple of moments on here. But yeah, otherwise, no complaints. All's going well. The off season's kind of going slow, not on Twitter, but in reality, it's going slow. So hopefully, we'll have some news as the new year is almost here. So yeah, LFGM.
Absolutely, absolutely. So remember, subscribe to both of their channels, guys. And listen, we're gonna start off with the trade that we saw pop up yesterday. I don't think anybody had a problem with this trade. It was a trade that you basically give up nothing and you got a solid back end guy in the rotation, and you got a bench, a bat on the bench that can play all three outfield positions. And if you don't know, the Mets and Brewers made a trade for Adrian Hauser and Tyrone Taylor, a mid-level to back end of the rotation guy, and a bench player that can play multiple outfield positions with a little bit of pop, a little bit of speed. So Hayden, I'm going to start with you with that. When you first heard that trade, were you like, I heard of that name, or do you really know that name? But did you like right away say, you know what? That's not a terrible trade. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I knew of Adrian Hauser for one thing. Yeah, I think everyone knows throwing up on the mound twice, not once, but twice. Yeah, literally, my friend texted me, we got throw up guy, so I kind of made the connection. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, you essentially got Eduardo Escobar. Correct me if I'm wrong. Coleman Crow was in the Escobar trade. So essentially, getting rid of Escobar and getting Taylor and Hauser, that's a win-win. The Brewers are clearly, cutting payroll by this. Mets, no concern at all. You look at Adrian Hauser, it's not a crazy move. It's not like signing, a top 5 pitcher in baseball. It's nothing like, signing Yamamoto or anything like that. But right now, it's a solid acquisition. He's 30 years old. Uh, he's a decent back end starter, depth. 4, 5, 6. We know how we know how the Mets have been the last couple seasons dealing with injuries. So we're not going to have Peterson to start off the season. So essentially, this could be your right-handed David Peterson, I guess you could say. Solid stuff, solid arsenal, sinker, fastball, slider, curveball, the basic arsenal of pitches. He's nothing fancy. He's not going to, strike out a ton of batters, low strikeout rate, kind of like another pitcher, just contact, put the ball in play, which is always good. That's a good philosophy to have. You obviously have that with Quintana, and especially with the pitch clock to, keep the pitchers pitch count down. So obviously Hauser is a great guy when it comes down to that. So getting Hauser, I'm not going to complain. You get a guy, Tyrone Taylor, right? Also solid guy. I mean, like I said, he's not a crazy offensive contributor, but he has good power. He'll slug. He could be a guy that's gonna give you 20 home runs. Ideally, would be nice. He's probably going to be a fourth outfielder. So maybe he'll be essentially like towards the end of the season last year. You saw kind of like a Mark Canna. If you want to call him a fourth outfielder, that's up to you. But he's not going to be a crazy contributor, but a good bench bat. We know that the Mets have been talking about bench and down the line, down the stretch, getting guys in, and the Mets have lacked power. And last year wasn't so much the case, and bringing in Taylor will only help validate that. So solid trade, like I said. It's moves like this that David Stearns, obviously, coincidence that Stearns these guys in during his time with Milwaukee. So yeah, solid moves. I'm not gonna complain. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Chris, what do you got with this? What were your thoughts and opinions when you saw this trade?
I was actually very shocked when I first saw this trade because we were all speculating what the relationship was going to be like between the Milwaukee Brewers and the New York Mets, having the David Stern situation play out and coming over as a president of baseball operations for the Mets. Listen, this is a win-win trade for the New York Mets when you realize what they gave up to acquire these two guys that are going to shore up two areas of this 2024 Mets roster. Adrian Hauser is a guy that's going to slot in as the sixth man in the rotation, depending on what the Mets do in the front end of that rotation. We all know what Yoshinobu Yamamoto in his situation is. There's high speculation in terms of that regard. But if they are able to get a second and third starter, whether it's free agency or trade, you can put Hauser as your sixth man and have Joey Lucchesi as a potential long man. A lot of people talk about Trevor Williams and the sort of aspect that was missed with Trevor Williams. You can now slot in Joey Lucchesi, who I think is perfectly capable of taking over that type of role. Adrian Hauser is a guy that is not going to wow you with the fastball. He's about 91 to 93, has a lot of run in his fastball and induces a lot of ground balls on that fastball. 4.12 ERA in 2023, a little bit above average. But like I said, for a sixth starter slotting in right behind Luis Severino, it's not a bad move at all. Tyrone Taylor directly puts the Mets out of the Michael A. Taylor talks. I think Michael A. Taylor and Tyrone Taylor are one and the same player, can provide you some pop, great defense. Baseball savants metrics on Tyrone Taylor's arm are plus, plus, plus. You slot that in at left field right next to Brandon Nimmo in left field. That is a recipe for success there, especially if Marte is able to stay healthy in that right field spot. Now, like I said, it's all contingent on what the Mets do in the front end of the rotation with a Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Shota Imanaga, Jordan Montgomery, etc. But this type of move for the value that you give up with Coleman Crowe is a win-win for the Mets. You got Coleman Crowe for Eduardo Escobar on the fire sale of the 2023 MLB deadline. All these prospects that come into the New York Mets, this past offseason or this past trade deadline are flippable candidates. I know that a lot of people are tied into Drew Gilbert. They're tied into Luis Angel Acuna. They're tied into Ryan Clifford. But when you talk about these secondary or tertiary type prospects like Coleman Crowe, like Landon Marceau, like Marco Vargas, like Ronald Hernandez, those latter two guys coming in a separate trade, these guys are all flippable candidates to shore up this 2024 Mets roster, which is exactly what the New York Mets did here. I think it's a beautiful trade for David Stearns, and it sort of gives you a little bit of insight on how the Mets view this trade market. Now, like I said, a lot of people still speculating on Corbin Burnes. Obviously, his situation with the Milwaukee Brewers is in flux still. I don't think we see a Corbin Burnes trade for the New York Mets this coming offseason, but it's good to know that the relationship is still at least a little bit established moving forward. I think that's the most important thing that us Mets fans want to take into consideration here. A lot of people were sort of speculating that the Brewers were pissed off and that ownership, that front office was pissed off with the way the David Stern situation shook out. And I think that this could be a plus sign for the New York Mets moving forward, still having that relationship with the Brewers. So I think it's a win-win trade. David Stearns definitely shoring up the 2024 Mets roster. And with these two additions, the Mets 40-man roster is up to 38. But Mike Mayer making a great point that the Mets are not only limited to two guys moving forward for the rest of the offseason going into 2024. There are subtractions still to be made to free up spots in the 40-man roster. So what you see right now is not necessarily what you're going to get by the time the 40-man roster shakes out. So keep that into consideration. I love this trade, and I think it kills two birds with one stone. And Tyrone Taylor also lower strikeout rate than Michael A. Taylor. Tyrone Taylor's at about 23.9%, I want to believe, compared to Michael A. Taylor's 29.1. So 81 games under Tyrone Taylor's belt in 2023 with 10 home runs. Like you said, times that by 2, you get 20 home runs on the dot. Tyrone Taylor definitely with a plus arm and a plus bat in terms of power can be that fourth outfielder type role and take over that fourth outfielder type role for the New York Mets in 2024. Will provide some competition for DJ Stewart. I will say that. A lot of people talking about where does DJ Stewart now fit into this whole equation. He's going to provide direct competition with DJ Stewart for that fourth outfielder role. So let's keep an eye out on that in spring training. But like I said, this trade, and Andy Martino had this quote saying the Mets flex their big guns in terms of taking on that $6 million between Hauser and Tyrone Taylor in this trade. That is not flexing their big guns. I'm sorry, Andy Martino. That is just simply not. $6 million is nothing to Steve Cohen's pockets. And I promise you, this is just one of the early moves that the Mets are going to do to shore up this 2024 roster. So like I said, Rob, this is an all-around win-win for the New York.
Yeah, and you hit the nail right on the head when you said the relationship that people talked about, that it was sour with the Mets and the Brewers because of David Stern and Cohen talking about Stern for 3 years now. It's non-existent. And that's important because I do believe if Corbin Burnes doesn't get moved in the offseason, he will get moved at the trade deadline, no matter if the Brewers are in it somewhat or not, because they're not paying him and they're not going to lose that player for nothing. So if the Mets are in a position where they're in a playoff spot or close to a playoff spot and they need that extra starting pitcher, depending on what happens during the first half of the season, they can go get a Corbin Burnes, and that relationship is there. And I think that this trade basically is telling that the relationship is there. We just gave a prospect away in Coleman Crowe that we got for Eduardo Escobar that had Tommy John surgery. So the guy was going to be not helpful to us, at least this year. So you're getting two players for a prospect that wasn't even going to be in a process of being a part of this organization, at least this year, when it comes to pitching. So I think it's important to realize that, it's a no-risk trade at all. If Hauser ends up being a disaster, well, it sucks, but he's a back-end guy that you don't have to put in a rotation. You can throw him, he only has 1 year on his contract. He's done after this year. Taylor got 3 years. So you got control on that aspect as well. So I think that's the important part that we're looking at as well. And I know there's some people in the chat that are complaining that, oh, if the Mets don't get Yamamoto, they're punting on the season. I'm sorry, you're not punting on a season when you still got Nimmo, McNeil, Alonso, and Lindor. All of those guys you could say had somewhat of a down year. And if they play to the back of their baseball cards, you can't tell me they're automatically already a 500 team by just playing on the back of their baseball cards. Not saying what anybody else is going to do. Say if a guy like Francisco Alvarez, now you got a full season with him, basically a second year under his belt coming into the season, who can hit 25 bombs, bat 250. That's an addition that, he was still getting into his little groove, through this season, a little bit more comfortable. Who knows about Beatty? But I still think that, this team never had a starting rotation healthy the entire season. You could talk about, all I heard from Yankee fans was their rotation was in shambles. Yet they always had a guy every fifth day in Cole that stabilized things. The Mets never had that all season. And when they did, it was too late in Verlander when he figured it out.
Absolutely. Can I say something real quick in terms of the Adrian Hauser situation with the Mets? Not only, like I said, does that provide flexibility for the Mets bullpen in terms of transitioning a potential Joey Lucchesi to the bullpen, if perhaps they do land Yamamoto or they pivot to a Jordan Montgomery and sign Shota Imanaga, like there is workings to be had there, especially in the injury front. This provides some much needed depth for the New York Mets. And I know that the New York Mets fan base hates depth. They hate it. But when you look at the 2023 season, when you had a guy like Denny Reyes coming in for spot starts when the injury started to flow in, or like I hate to use this example because he did do well down the stretch in Jose Buto, but everyone when he first came up was like, who the hell is Jose Buto? Those type of guys are no longer going to be needed for the New York Mets in 2024 when you have a six-man rotation as deep as it is, and you have not only Adrian Hauser in the back end, but you have Joey Lucchesi as a floater. And let's not forget about Mike Vassell, because I feel like a lot of people are forgetting about Mike Vassell and his readiness to compete at the MLB level in 2024. The Mets are set up for success, and they are set up now in the back end to not have to rely on glorified AAA pitchers to come up and save, quote unquote, the New York Mets, because Denny Reyes was not moving the needle last season. I'm sorry. He just wasn't. And the Mets are not going to need his services in 2024, which I think is an underrated aspect that a lot of Mets fans are forgetting about when talking about this trade and talking about Adrian Hauser. And like I said, Tyrone Taylor is what Tyrone Taylor is. Michael A. Taylor, whether or not he wanted 2 or 3 years on his deal, we don't know exactly what the negotiations are. But when you kill two birds with one stone in one trade for a guy like Coleman Crowe, a guy who is now undergoing, or he underwent Tommy John surgery, and his 2024 season is in flux, like, listen, you have to realize that what the Mets gave up in this trade, like you said earlier, Rob, and Hayden both, what the Mets gave up in this trade versus what they received is just a night and day difference. I'm sorry, it's a night and day difference. So I'm absolutely proud of this trade, and I think that these guys both in 2024 are going to play huge roles in this run.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hayden, I wanted to ask you this because I've been seeing this in the comments a lot, right? The Dodgers did last offseason by not signing, Trey Turner back and not bringing back certain guys to save on the payroll for what everybody assumed and happened, Ohtani, right? They didn't spend them big on free agency. They basically had a lackluster free agency last offseason, yet everybody praised them for it. Yet the Mets are doing very similar things here, waiting for 2025 for that Juan Soto situation, and among other things, when this free agent period is a lot better than this free agent class. it's funny how people talk about the Dodgers and, it's a double standard. And I understand why it's a double standard, but let's not act like the Dodgers, won 3 or 4 world championships over the last 15 years, because they have not. And they get praised for not spending money last year to save all their pennies and all their gold bullions for Ohtani. And it's the best thing ever. And they're the greatest franchise ever. Yet the Mets are doing this, telling you they're doing the same thing. And basically what Cohen said when he first took over this team, that he wants to be the East Coast Dodgers. If he did the same thing when new ownership took over for the Dodgers. He came in, traded and signed for older players around the league, brought them in so they can build up their farm system. They're trying to do that, yet trying to still be competitive. Exactly what the Dodgers are doing. And now this year, the Mets are doing what the Dodgers are doing, which are not spending a ton of money, but still putting the competitive team out there, because nobody picked the Dodgers to win the division last year after their offseason that everybody assumed was bad. Their biggest offseason addition was JD Martinez, and people thought that was like, okay, that's not a bad signing, but nobody expected JD Martinez to be that good. But everybody was picking the Padres to win the division. And, honestly, people were picking the Dodgers to come third in that division. So I see it like this, Hayden, and I want to get your thoughts on this. The fact that the Dodgers did what they did last offseason and basically spent no money in the offseason, and people killed them for it. Well, actually, I'm sorry. People praised them for it. Yet the Mets are doing something similar, and guess what? Now the Mets are getting killed at the moment. Now, if the Mets get Yamamoto, it's kind of hard to say they're not spending money this offseason, but say if they do get Yamamoto, and that's the only big signing they make, what do you take from that? Like, do you believe, doing something similar to what the Dodgers doing last year, it's not that much different at all.
Yeah, well, I see it both ways. I think the main difference between the Mets and the Dodgers is the Dodgers didn't spend any money last year, and they ended up with how many wins? 99, 100, 101. Where, I guess, and it's ironic that the Mets did spend, and they ended up with what, like 75 wins, and fans following football in May. So I think that's the main difference, and I agree with you. That's what the Dodgers did the last 2 off seasons. They pretty much based their the last 2 off seasons, maybe the last one mainly, to get Ohtani. Obviously, they made a couple, eye-soaring moves, some fancy moves in the beginning with Bats and Freeman, and extending both of those guys. And then, obviously, Ohtani was kind of the cherry on top. Obviously, yeah, that'll make, the Dodgers' case of World Series or bust in a non-cupcake season, more serious. So, hopefully all the people that, say Lowell Mets will apply that to the Dodgers, because, I think they should be fair. But that's besides the point. When it comes down to the Mets, listen, if you're not going to spend and then you get Yamamoto, that's fine. At the end of the day, Mets are not going to land Yamamoto. It would be a massive disappointment if they didn't get anything else. Not saying they're punting or giving up or not, but, and I get it, we talked about the confidence level, past streams and before the stream start, and before the stream started, we talked about confidence levels, and that this team would arguably do best when expectations are low and they don't have high expectations. We saw it 2019; they had no expectations, and look what happened. And then, the last couple years, 21 and then 3 minus 2022, of course, they had high expectations. And what did what's the farthest they got? What, one wild card win? So, at the end of the day, it would be a massive disappointment if the Mets missed out on Yamamoto. Bringing in Yamamoto really makes a big difference to this team. And I hate to say that one player carries the team, and I really do. But, you've seen what an ace could do for a rotation.
Correct.
And, we talked about it. In baseball, you really only need other people. You only need one ace and, 1 or 2 aces, and then 3, 4, 5 mid guys. And right now, could you call Senga an ace? Sure. If he does what he did this past season, yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that he could be considered that. Everyone else is, not really considered a top tier pitcher in my opinion, but they could definitely prove me wrong. So bringing in Yamamoto, I mean, simply could determine whether this team is going to be a 90-win ball club or a 2023 on repeat. So that's just simply how it is. I mean, if you lose Yamamoto, it would be a massive disappointment. Everyone for the last every time I was asked, should the Mets get Ohtani? Nope, you didn't get him. Should the Mets get Soto? You're probably not going to get him because the Yankees are probably going to do that, new MLB contract structure. I would be very shocked if Soto walked and then you missed out on Yamamoto. So, it'd be really, and, we've seen the Mets have never really gotten the big guy. We've said that for the last 3 years. They've, there's always these, Ohtani, Springer, you never got him. So, I mean, that would be the perfect opportunity to actually say that you got the number one guy, number two, maybe number three guy on the market. So, be a massive disappointment if you lost on Yamamoto. But if you could pivot and make up for it, go for it.
Yeah, I agree. And just a little bit of breaking news here. Andy Martino and John Heyman reported that the Giants are told they are out. So, again, I don't even think that's about money because if you didn't see what Buster Posey said about the city of San Francisco, and that's the big reason why players don't want to go there because that city is in shambles. And I talked about that on my stream yesterday. Players don't want to go to that city anymore. It's a complete shit show in that city. And again, I'm not trying to shit on a city or anything like that, but it's been well documented. I don't care what news channel you watch or what side of the political lines you are. It's not hard to figure out that city is a complete and utter disaster, and teams are slowly leaving the Bay Area and are not drawing the way they used to be drawing. And listen, I don't even know what that was. AT&T Park now, whatever the hell it's called. It's a beautiful ballpark and it's a beautiful city. It's one of the most beautiful cities in this country, and no player wants to go there because of all the issues that city entails. And I think that's a big reason why the players don't want to go there. And you could say about money all you want. I'm telling you guys this right now. Yamamoto is taking the most money. Now, if Cohen isn't the biggest bid, then we have a lot to talk about Steve Cohen, because there's no reason why he can't be. There's no limit on what you can give him. There's no reason why you can't offer him $380 million for 12 years and blow past everybody. You can do that. Now, you can't do anything if he wants to be a Yankee or a Dodger and takes less money. But I'm telling you right now, this process is not going on this long to take less money because he would have signed already. I think people have to realize that situation. This is not rocket science here. This is complete common sense. Joel Wolf, who is an excellent agent, he's an agent of Senga, he's an agent of Stanton, guys that got the most money for their players. That's what he constantly does. He is not going to put a player's not going to come into this Major League Baseball union as a guy who has no cap as a Japanese posted player and is going to take less money, because this doesn't only hurt the union, it hurts the team that posted him, because they are expecting the most money as for posting Yamamoto. We forget about that part, right? We don't care about the posting part and the Japanese team that's counting on that $40-50 million posting fee. So if he takes less money, they're going to be upset, and that's not something. And remember, Ohtani was a different story. There was a cap on him, so it couldn't have been outrageous amount of money, and this is different. And I think the posting fee is going to matter in this negotiations as well. So knowing that it's taking this long is only telling me that he wants the most money. That's it. And again, it might not be the Mets. Maybe Cohen does have a limit and say, listen, I'm going 370 for a guy I never seen pitch in the major leagues, which every team should have a little bit in the back of their mind that Yamamoto can be a complete bust, because it's possible. The last thing any of these teams need is to spend 10 years, $350 million, and he's a Keigawa. If he's a guy that just does not perform and even if he's an average pitcher, it's a disaster. So if I believe what we're hearing, and we just heard a couple hours ago that the Mets finally made an offer, and it was what was the exact I forgot what the exact wording was from Martino and a couple of other people. If you guys
The
can check
Giants are just out. The Giants are just out. That's it.
that's
They're
it,
out.
right?
They've been
Okay, good.
notified that they're out.
I did see that they made a substantial, very aggressive, substantial offer, serious offer of the Mets. So apparently it's
Yeah.
aggressive. Whatever that means. I don't know. We don't see. Here's the problem that I have with this reporting. I don't care that they made an offer because that's the obvious part. You don't have to be a genius to report that. What I want to know is what is the offer? We haven't heard any offers. Like, why are the Giants out? Like, did they just not want to give over $300 million? Like, we have no idea. Like, for all we know, he might sign for 10 years, $200 million, and nobody had any idea. Like, until it happens. Like, anybody can chime in here. Like, I just don't understand. Like, it's been a complete disaster with these reporters this offseason. And I'm not sure what the hell is going on because there's no reporting anymore.
I think it comes down to the fact that the Yoshinobu Yamamoto sweepstakes were just up to the three teams in general from the start. It was always up to the Dodgers, Mets, and Yankees. The Giants were reported to have all the terms agreed to, just like the Dodgers contract for Ohtani. It's no doubt in my mind that they're probably offering exactly what the other teams are offering for Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He probably just doesn't want to go there for one reason or another. This bidding has always been between those three teams. We know that. That's been a fact, and that's been something that we can highly speculate. Now, is he going to prioritize fit over money? That's the thing here. I've been saying this for the longest time. If the Mets want to land Yoshinobu Yamamoto, which I firmly believe, and I will go on record here on this podcast, if you want to quote me, I don't care. The Mets are going to sign Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I'm making that prediction right now. I do not think Steve Cohen's going to get outbid. So if it's about the money in Joel Wolfe and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, I do think that Yoshinobu Yamamoto will be a New York Met. That is my prediction. If by some chance the posting fee and whatever money is going back to the Oryx Buffaloes doesn't quite matter to Yoshinobu Yamamoto, which PS usually isn't customary when it comes to these international free agents with these posting fees. That's not how it plays out. If he decides it's fit over money, then you can take a look at the Dodgers and Yankees as being maybe the quote unquote co-favorites, as JP Morosi has been continually spewing on MLB Network. But like I said, I have no doubt in my mind that Steve Cohen is going to offer $25 to $30 million on top of the next highest bidder to land Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And like everybody, like a lot of people have been speculating, oh, what are the Mets going to do outside of Yoshinobu Yamamoto? Because let's be honest, Yamamoto by himself does not move the Mets roster as it currently stands to a championship contending team. I think we all know that. His addition alone does not move that needle. But when you look at what he's going to demand in terms of a contract, you talk about 8, 9, maybe even 10 years on his deal. That's a controllable contract that you now have leverage over and you can build around if you're the New York Mets. You already have a core. Adding Yoshinobu Yamamoto on top of that is just going to give them that much more leeway, especially in terms of adding more free agents into the mix next offseason when you have the contracts of Verlander, Scherzer, McCann, etc. coming off the books. We've talked about this before. So, like I said, there's a lot of, I guess, false information being spewed out there in regards to Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And I firmly do believe that the New York Mets will end up with him just because, like you said, Rob, if Steve Cohen does not outbid the rest of the teams for Yamamoto, then we have a problem in terms of how the New York Mets fan base views this team. And I will go on record in terms of, I guess, not combating Hayden's point, but just making the alternative point to say, if the Mets are the highest bidders for Yamamoto, and he decides to go elsewhere, well, what more can you really do at that point? There's nothing else that the Mets can do at that point. They did everything in their right to recruit him, to give him the most money, and he chose another place. So be it. That is not the New York Mets' fault. They have to get to a point where they can build a sustainable team, a legacy franchise that players want to come to. The Mets are not that just yet, but Steve Cohen's pockets will win them this bid, in my complete and humble opinion. And I am foreseeing Yoshinobu Yamamoto being a Met here very shortly.
Yeah, and it's a great point because like it's interesting because like people keep on making up their own opinions, especially the reporters that are not really reporting. There's nothing, because if there's more to report and there's more information out there to report that is legitimate, there would have been more people that have it. But every day, like for 1 week, everybody was a favorite at one point. The Red Sox were the favorite, the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees. For 1 week, every team had a chance to be a favorite, according to all these reporters. And then we find out with Jeff Passan, which I think everybody is like, all right, let's wait for the Passan bomb to come, because then he says that none of these offers were real. So I see it like this. If he was going to take less money for, again, the number 18 jersey, then he would have signed already. Then money wasn't that much of an issue. Because if the money is as close as everybody might think it is, and Cohen's only $10 million more, and he really wants that number 18 and wants to wear the pinstripes, then why hasn't he signed already? This is what I don't understand, right? According to everybody, he grew up a Dodger fan. Okay, fun, cool, great, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. West Coast, Japan, kind of closer than the East Coast. We all know that, right? Okay, so he's enamored with the Yankees because of their brand, the pinstripes, the legacy, the championships. Understandable. And I respect it for players in Japan and other countries to know the Yankees and not know these other teams' history, or know guys like Tanaka and Matsui, the biggest Japanese players that actually, were a part of Major League Baseball besides Ohtani. I understand that. But why hasn't he signed? If money isn't at least the number one factor or number two factor, and the number one factor is about the team's legacy or history, then why continue to take meetings with the Mets? Why go to a second meeting with the Mets? Not just at Citi Field. Go to Steve Cohen's house in Connecticut. He could have declined that. He could have went to, Hal Steinbrenner's house, which I guess that didn't happen. But like the Mets, Steve Cohen and the Mets have done everything possible. Fly to Japan, have dinner with him and his family. Fly Yamamoto to New York, to his home in Connecticut for dinner. You can't wine and dine a player anymore, knowing that you don't want this player and you did everything you can. You don't get him. And if the Mets have the highest offer, there's really nothing you can do except, oh well.
I will say that it is leverage on both sides. Like, this is where we don't know how the situation shakes out, because Yamamoto and his camp can be leveraging either side for more money, right? Like, he knows that the Mets are going to come with the highest offer, so he leverages the Yankees and Dodgers to drive up the Mets' price. Or he already has it in his mind that he wants to be a Dodger or Yankee, and he knows that Cohen is going to pay the most money, so he leverages them to drive up the Yankees and Dodgers price. Nobody really knows. Yamamoto is going to reap these benefits no matter who he chooses. And that's what I'm saying with these MLB journalists. Like, I've been saying it on my channel. I've been saying it on my X account. All these journalists that claim to have these quotes about their co-favorites, or quote unquote, who's the favorite to sign Yamamoto, it's a bunch of BS. And I hope nobody in this chat is listening to those guys like Heyman, Morosi, Martino. They have no factual information on that. Anybody right now between those three teams, the Mets, Dodgers, and Yankees, they can be leveraged right now. And nobody knows who is being leveraged out of those three. But Yamamoto and his camp can leverage either of those three to sign with whoever he wants. And I think that's the most important aspect to sort of drive home here. So like I said, I am predicting, just like I said, it's customary for these international free agents to take the highest AAV, for that posting fee to go back to their respective squad. The team that posted Yamamoto, the Orgs Buffaloes, that might be the Mets' saving grace here if he's thinking about that route. His agent also is Senga's agent, if I'm not mistaken, correct? He's also Senga's agent.
Yeah.
That helps quite a ton too. So the Mets are already in a position where they've got a deal done with the guy that got posted last season in Senga. Like I said, I hope they're doing the utmost recruiting like the Yankees are doing with the whole 18 jersey being brought to him. It's his if he wants to take it. That is lame to me. The Yankees are blabbering too much to the media for my liking, and so I really do think the Mets end up with Yoshinobu Yamamoto. That is a homer take. I will say that is strictly opinionative, and I'm going on the record and saying that. But like I said, it's hard for me to visualize Yamamoto leaving up $30 to $40 million on top of the next highest bidder just to go to a team that fits him more or he was a fan of. That's hard for me to visualize.
Yeah, and I want to say something that somebody put in the chat. K Met said, I don't think it's a great idea to say that we should listen to you guys and not the respective reporting. Well, we are not reporting anything. We are not saying this is what's happened. This is not from our sources. We're giving our opinions. The problem with the reporters is that they're giving their opinions as a report. That's the problem that we're all having. It's not that we're not telling you that, from my source, that Ohtani's Yamamoto's going to take the most money. We're not saying that. We're just saying that 99.9% of players that are free agents take the most money. It's a fact. Nobody takes less money unless they go back to their original team, i.e. Aaron Judge, i.e. Aaron Nola, right? So that comment makes no sense because we're not reporting anything. We're telling you our opinion. Reporters are there to tell us what they know, not what they want to have in their mind to tell us that's what they're thinking. That's not reporting. That's an opinion. You should have a blog. That's a blog. If you're reporting to the fans of whatever fan base, you need to report what you found out from your sources, not your opinions. Because too many times, where did these offers come from that we supposedly heard from the Giants and the Red Sox, and then Passan says they were false? So were those opinions from people that had a narrative? Because those offers came in from reporters from those teams. So clearly they had a motive. The same thing with Andy Martino. If you don't believe Andy Martino is a Yankee shill, you're not paying attention to him. Because Andy Martino, who was hired by SNY, who was hired to be a Mets beat reporter, and then when SNY turned into more of a New York local establishment, now he's for both teams, but he had no problem writing a book about the Yankees. So, and then on top of that, anytime Andy Martino, when that whole dinner with Yamamoto and Cohen popped up, Andy Martino couldn't get to his phone fast enough to tweet out about him meeting with the Yankees again. He couldn't wait. He had that itch. He was probably on the toilet bowl taking a shit and couldn't wait to wipe his ass to tweet that. The fact of the matter is, we're not reporting anything. I want you to make these guys clear. We're not telling you, hey, I got a source in, whatever agency in the CAA agency telling you that the Mets are going to sign Yamamoto. Nobody's saying that. This is our opinion. Hayden has an opinion. I have an opinion. Chris has an opinion. Nelson, who isn't here, has an opinion. Whoever tells you on YouTube that they're reporting something, they're lying to you. All right? We're telling you our opinions. You don't have to agree with our opinion, and we might have an argument about this opinion, but that's fine. But we're not reporting anything. Their job is to report facts, not report opinions, because that's not journalism. Sorry, Hayden?
Yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much said everything. Just sign him. That's all I say.
Yeah, yeah, Chris, good.
I agree with you, Rob. Like, you're spitting right now. We don't have any sort of insider information, but if you want to go look at those cookie cutter quotes from Heyman, Morosi, and Martino, if you want to go look for those Yankees sided quotes from guys that also don't have any factual information on Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and we can tell that they don't have factual information on Yoshinobu Yamamoto and his situation because of the way they've been reporting on him for the last 2 weeks. If you all want to go and listen to them day in and day out, and rip your hair out, that's completely fine. Or you can come in to this channel and listen to us talk about this in an objective lens while we tell you that we have no insider information, but tell you that XYZ is happening and it's happening because of whatever reason may have you. That is also a different thing. We have no insider information. We'll never have insider information until we get to that big league level. Rob's probably on his way there very shortly. But like I said, yeah, like we don't have any insider information. We're never going to sell you on a fact. These are all opinions. And I will say that first and foremost for myself, all I speak about is opinions from me. But the way that I view the MLB journalism game right now is that Heyman is also reporting on opinions. Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic, he basically had a quote out there saying that teams really don't want to give these MLB insiders information for one reason or another. Like that was factually stated by Ken Rosenthal. So just take whatever you hear with a grain of salt. And once the official report comes out there, I'm sure Jeff Passan or maybe even Mark Feinstein is going to have the first beat on it. So that's all I got to say on that.
All right, so as one of the, I know people, Ty Schmidt, who's on the Pat McAfee show, he's hearing from a reliable source that Yamamoto to the Yankees is 9 years, $326 million. Being told Matsui helped push it over the goal line. Yoshi keeps the number 18. Again, he has a ton of followers, over 200,000, and he is part of the McAfee show. But again, this was 20 minutes ago, and not Jeff Passan or any other reporter who, you know, that loves to put stuff good for the Yankees has put that out there yet. So if that's true, then that's $36 million a year. So that's probably lower than I expected.
Mets will beat that. Mets will beat that. I promise you. Andy Martino.
Okay, if that's yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. I'm just saying. And Andy Martino, for lack of a better source here, is saying that the Mets have not been officially been ruled out as of 28 minutes ago as well. So, like I said,
so I'm assuming that Joel Wolf and Yamamoto is going back to the Mets for a final offer. Like, because if the Yankees and the Mets and Dodgers are not out of it yet, and we haven't been told that yet, then they're clearly going back for a higher offer. So I guess he really doesn't want to be a Yankee after all, right?
And that whole pinstripe narrative to me is so like outplayed. It's like okay, Yamamoto wants to be in pinstripes because of what? Like what he grew up watching Babe Ruth, like he grew up watching Yogi Bear. Like come on, let's get real. The Till Mets Do Us Part podcast, John and Ibby said it best. Like this is a 25-year-old prospect that this MLB is trying to sign here. He didn't grow up watching the Yankee greats. He probably grew up a Dodgers fan, as well speculated, but like what does this Yankees pinstripe really mean in this day and age? They haven't won a World Series in over a decade. Like, I'm sorry, the league has shifted to a point where the Yankees are no longer, I'm sorry, and their baseball history is rich, but they're no longer considered a quote unquote consistent powerhouse. That is just the facts of what the MLB has been over the last decade. So, like I said, take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Like Rob is saying with this breaking news here of who'd you say just broke that news about the Yankees and Yamamoto?
Ty Schmidt from the Pat McAfee show.
Oh, guess what? I've never heard of him. So let's see if he's actually let's see if he's actually accurate in his reportings, which I can probably assume probably is not going to be. But if I'm wrong, you can bookmark it, and I'll probably clip this later on and give my apologies to him on Twitter where needed to.
Well, here's the thing that I'm saying. Like, why haven't we heard the Dodgers or the Mets offer yet, but we heard the Yankees offer? And oh, by the way, I just find out Ty Schmidt is a Yankees fan because I just went through his Twitter, and he's a Yankees fan. So
classic. That's a classic right there.
I'm looking right now, and I just looked like I'm just going a little nuts for this, and I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, oh, look at that, you have a Yankee hat on. Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, so I just found that. Okay, so again, he might be right, and you know what? Good for him if he got that information. Hey, listen, if he reported the fact, congratulations, you're the first reporter who done so in a while. So we'll see if that's the truth, but until we hear multiple reporters saying something like that, we really don't know because I mean, why do Ty Schmidt say something like that when, you know what I'm saying? But hold on, we're hearing it though. You know, there's really not, you know, we just heard that. So MLB Scoops, whatever you want to talk about with that, said that the Mets have been informed they are out. I don't know. Andy Martino just tweeted that the Mets aren't out yet, so I don't know what the hell is going on. So you know, I guess we're getting some news while we come, real or fake, I don't know. So Michael Marino here, I think that's a reliable source, right? Just says, I love Ty Schmidt on Pat McAfee's show. He's hilarious. With that in mind, I wouldn't be banking on him accurately breaking the Yamamoto news. So again, here we go again with these reporters that now these are more, you know, reporters that we know of. Michael Marino from the National MLB Reporter. He is a reporter that has been on multiple YouTube channels multiple times that people trust. So if he just said that, I don't know, Chris, if you heard, but Michael Marino just tweeted that he loves Ty Schmidt on the Pat McAfee show, but I wouldn't be banking on him accurately breaking the Yamamoto news. So I don't. Again, here we go again. We're going with what is true again. I don't know.
So this indicates to me, like you said, MLB Scoops. I heard MLB Scoops and Michael Marino and whoever else from the Yankees side. This indicates to me when all these quote unquote sources from X are starting to sort of dwindle in and sort of narrow in on the Yamamoto news, and
Whatever's
it's coming
trending.
from every which direction. This indicates to me that he might be on the brink of a decision, but the actual decision has not been leaked yet. Like, this is going to come down to the wire, but this decision is sort of imminent to me. And with the buzz that he's now getting from all these sort of beat reporters, insiders, whether they have sources or not, I would probably guess that his decision is going to come within the next 24 to 36 hours.
Yeah,
That's
it
what
seems like
I
a
would
lot of
probably
it's
assume.
coming down to this now. Yeah, it seems like a lot of
It
the
is.
information is coming out now. Yeah, see,
Yep.
I'm getting multiple people now that's saying that that the Ty Schmidt thing is, you know, it's possible that it could be true, but a lot of people don't believe it is. So okay, here we go.
No,
So
it's
you
not.
know, the source that pops up out of nowhere. Uh, again, another Yankee fan, by the way. That's been well known. Again, we'll see, because I don't know what's going on, because we haven't heard one offer from the Dodgers or the Mets, and that doesn't make sense. Why haven't we heard any offers from those two teams, specifically the Dodgers? Say if the Dodgers are the second favorite, and the Mets are third favorite in this race.
Yep.
Why haven't we heard a Dodgers offer yet? That's what I don't understand. Why do we only hear a Yankees offer? It's kind of weird. No,
My thing is that if Jeff Passan had a scoop that he was very, very confident in, he would be the first to break, even before an official signing, say Yoshinobu Yamamoto is on the brink of a decision. He probably wouldn't name the team, but he would probably say that he's on the brink of a decision. So if you don't hear Jeff Passan at least say that much, take everything with a grain of salt. And that's all I got to say about the topic. You can listen to MLB Scoops. I've drowned them out. You can listen to anybody else on the internet that you want to. I've done this game already. I've played this game. I'm not playing it anymore. I don't care about anybody's sources. I don't care about who these MLB insiders are. I'm listening into Will Salmon, Jeff Passan, and Mark Feinstein. JP Morosi, John Heyman, Ken Rosenthal, they can find the door. I don't care. Those names I listed are on my safe boat. So
yeah, I'm really confused right now. But well, let's talk about the other stuff on the topic until we get actual real information from anybody. Again, Twitter's going nuts right now. Like, it's X or whatever the hell you want to call it. It's going nuts right now. So again, the Mets made an offer. We know that's confirmed. We know it was a very aggressive offer, whatever that is. I find it hard to believe that 9 for 326, the Mets didn't offer more. I find that hard to believe. Now, if he took less money, again, we can't do nothing about that. So, and I think Heyman just tweeted. I see people put in. I'm trying to.
Yankees made a significant bid on Yamamoto, but they haven't heard one way or another, according to
so
John.
There you go.
Yep.
So again, So again, we know they made a significant offer, but we also heard a couple hours ago, that the Mets made a very aggressive offer as well. So is it going to be, all right, one final offer and then I'm going to choose a team? Or is it going to be, all right, there's one offer, let's go for the second offer? Like, I don't, I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. So, all right. So if the Mets don't get Yamamoto, all right, let's say if these are all true and he's going to the Yankees. Great. Wonderful. So maybe Ty Schmidt was right about the offer, but not that it's a done deal. Maybe that's true. So Hayden, let me ask you something. David Stern says we are not trading prospects for rentals. Dylan Cease is not a rental. The Mets don't get Yamamoto. They got to pivot. They don't want to give $200 million to Montgomery. They don't want to give $200 million to Blake Snell. Would they pivot to Dylan Cease?
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Cease is a option. Obviously, we look at his numbers, and with the Chicago White Sox, he's dealt with a couple injuries, but it's nothing too serious. Cease has good stuff. I mean, it's that simple. He's around that prime pitcher age. I think he's like 27 or 28. So he's around that prime pitcher age. I couldn't tell you what his exact contract looks like right now, but obviously probably would be on a team-friendly deal most likely. Has good stuff. Like I said, Dylan Cease, I've followed the Chicago White Sox a little bit this year. I went to a couple games there over the summer, and I was fortunate enough to see him pitch. Has good stuff. Nice arsenal of pitches. Fastball, the slider, the curveball, changeup, and then maybe another pitch that I'm forgetting. Good stuff. Good strikeout rate, whiff percentage, chase rate, all that great stuff. Limits hard contact. You want to go into the basic stats. Sub 250 ERA type guy. He's a Cy Young caliber player. No doubt, he'll give you good stuff. I think Cease is a option they can go to. Obviously, I would prefer more the Montgomery route, but if it really came down to it, Cease could be a fair pivot. What is his current contract with the Chicago White Sox? Let's see.
I'm assuming
Dylan
he's still
Cease contract. Yeah, he's on arbitration.
Yeah.
Second.
$10-12 million.
Arbitration
maybe?
2. So he's not so he doesn't become a free agent until 2026. So I mean, you'd have him for 2 years, which isn't horrible. 27, so then he'd be a free agent when he's about 29, 30. He's a Boris guy, isn't that wonderful? So some more Scott Boris pitchers that have injury concerns. Isn't that lovely? No, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a possibility. It doesn't hurt to look into. I mean, it's pretty obvious that the White Sox are going to kind of blow it up. It kind of seems that, that they've said that guys like Luis Robert and Dylan Cease have, are on the market to possibly trade. So, yeah, I mean, the White Sox are probably going to blow it all up. I wouldn't be surprised if they, start to trade off some of their guys in their roster. And I mean, they have young, talented guys, guys that 4 or 5 years ago were top level prospects, and are kind of on a the White Sox, they're on a team that isn't really going to win. I mean, you're minus 2020 and 2021. They haven't really done anything. So I mean, I would have no issue regardless of Dylan Cease, but if they wanted to go out and look for any guys on the White Sox, whether it's in their rotation, bullpen, they have a couple guys out there. I'm looking at their roster right now, and they definitely have made a lot of, Yon Moncada, Andrew Benintendi, not horrible. So yeah, I think Dylan Cease could be a fair guy, but I would much rather the Mets go down the Montgomery route. But if it really came down to it and you failed on Yamamoto, then yeah, I mean you have multiple candidates to pivot to, and Cease could be that one candidate.
Yeah. So Chris, what do you think about if the Mets would pivot to Dylan Cease if Yamamoto does not come to the Mets? What do you think? Since he isn't a rental, he got 2 years left on his deal.
Yeah, I mean, I like Dylan Cease for the right price, to be honest with you. I've talked about Dylan Cease for so long on this channel, on this podcast. Depends what the White Sox are going to want for him. We've heard about the Dylan Cease market early on, sort of materializing. The Braves were thought to be as serious contenders for Dylan Cease. Like I said, Dylan Cease is a guy who posted a 2.2 ERA in 2022. He doesn't have the sample size in the league that I would want him to have if we're giving up that kind of prospect haul that the White Sox are going to want for him. But I would certainly be open to trading for Cease and maybe a combination of one of their hitters. I know a lot of people are talking about Luis Robert. Amish Nelson is a very big proponent of Luis Robert. That also kills two birds with one stone. So, like I said, whether it's a package deal or a standalone deal for Dylan Cease makes sense. And I see Juan here, Cease and Robert for a package here. Absolutely, that could make a lot of sense. But in terms of a pivot point, like if the Mets don't land Yamamoto, if the Mets don't trade for Cease, like Hayden said, I don't want Jordan Montgomery on a 6 or 7 year deal, but if you do that, then you can go ahead and roll with that rotation for now and then target Corbin Burnes in 2025. And then you'd have a rotation of Corbin Burnes, Kodai Senga, and Jordan Montgomery as your top three. And to be honest with you, I'm liking that top three more often than not. So, like I said, though, Dylan Cease has the potential to be a number 2 starter. I don't know if he's going to be an ace in this league, to be honest with you, with his command and all that. But it's hard for me to imagine the Mets pulling a trade-off like that because given how reluctant they've been to sort of trade those top-tier prospects for these sort of guys, even though Dylan Cease has about 2 years left on his sort of controllability in terms of his contract, it doesn't make too much sense to me at this point. I was a proponent of Dylan Cease at the front end of the offseason, but now given how the Mets have sort of, I guess, told us by default what their sort of strategy is going to be, I just don't think it's realistic for the Mets to go after Dylan Cease. So I think it's highly likely that they pivot in free agency if it's not Yamamoto. And then we look forward to that 2025 free agency. Like I said, the rest of this offseason is going to give us a great idea whether this is a true transition year in 2024 or not going into 2025. We're going to find that answer out shortly. So like I said, Mets fans, we are awaiting that sort of answer. And even if the Mets do get Yamamoto, that's not to say that this year isn't a transition period. They'd be pretty much paying the core plus Yamamoto in terms of a contract fee up front. But if they don't get the necessary pieces to add your left fielder, your DH, then what are we really doing here? Rob, I agreed with you at the top of the segment. Like, you can't really waste a year with the core and how they're getting paid and plus adding Yamamoto onto that and expect to be taken seriously. But at the end of the day, if Cohen's willing to forego that salary and at least compete for a playoff spot in 2024 and looking forward to that 2025 free agency, it could be plausible, but I'm in the same boat as you. Is like, it doesn't make too much sense to me, right? So we'll see what happens. I don't know if Dylan Cease is the right move.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind if they made that move. Again, I'm not the prospect hugger. I never was. I always say get the proven talent. And, if you can get a proven talent that's 29, 30 years old, you're not getting a 37-year-old you traded for a couple of prospects. The fact of the matter is I always go for the proven player because that is your quickest way to win. And again, we keep on forgetting that the core of this team is from our farm system. Like, you can't I'm sorry, it's not normal what the Braves have done and what the Orioles have done. It took the Orioles 20 years to get what they have now. The Braves, it's rare that you get 4, 5, 6 guys coming out of your farm system and all of them turn out really, really good, if not all-stars. It doesn't happen often. We're expecting that for the Mets, and there's a pretty good chance that that's not going to happen. Like, what we got from Nimmo, Alonso, McNeil is probably a hell of a lot more than what – I mean, we just saw the Yankees go through a process. What they were going through a transition in 2017, yet all those players played well, and then half of them are not even in the league anymore or are on, minor league deals and not even on the Yankees anymore. The only one that really turned out really well was Aaron Judge. So it goes both ways. I see it as this. If you can make that move and it seems, like a good move, you do it. Like, why build up a farm system and work on developing and work on scouting and everything like that? You didn't hire a director of scouting. You didn't hire all these new people for your farm system that's supposed to be really good scouts. Stearns has been really good in his drafts, in the lower end of the drafts in his career. If you're worried about your farm system and you're not worried about how you draft, then you should have no problem doing what you need to do. If you give up 3 or 4 prospects, you can draft 2 or 3 of them in the next draft. And if you really believe in your scouting and your directors and David Stearns and believes in himself, then you can replenish that farm system, no problem. So I think that's where we have to look at when it comes to Dylan Cease. In my opinion, if you can do it, you do it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, those guys that came over in 2023 at the deadline, like, even if you're married to guys like Drew Gilbert, Luis Angel Acuna, there's other guys that the Mets acquired that you can readily flip right now. And we saw that with Coleman Crow in the Brewers trade. So, like I said, the Mets are not opposed to doing that. And I think we're going to see more of that in the future for the New York Mets.
Correct. This is not saying that you can't use these prospects, because again, you got 26 guys on a roster. If you can't play all your prospects. You're not sitting prospects on the bench. Isn't that what Mets fans were complaining about the last 2 seasons? Why are you bringing these guys up if they're going to be on the bench? So you want Brett Beatty to sit on the bench behind Ronnie Mauricio? You want Kevin Parada to sit behind Francisco Alvarez? That does not happen. That's not how it works. What Stearns has to do, and he has to do this rather quickly, because it can come up in a situation where at the deadline, if the Mets are playing well and it comes at the deadline where they're in or close to a playoff spot and you got to make a trade for a bat or an arm, you better be willing to have an understanding of what guys are expendable, because you're going to fall into another trap where you're going to half-ass the deadline, and it's going to hurt this team overall. And then you waste another year of Alonso, another year of Nimmo, another year of Lindor. How many more core best years of these players are you going to keep on losing out on? Because what are we waiting for, 2026? And then Alonso's 33 years old, Lindor's 33 years old, Nimmo's 34, McNeil's 36. That's what you're going to do. And then you got to hope that your prospects work out when your core that was doing well on your team for the last couple of years, you're wasting those prime years of these players. So it doesn't make sense to me. I think that's what you have to do when it comes down to David Stearns. David Stearns can't come in here. If we didn't have all these core guys under contract, then I would say, all right, he has about a year or 2, probably 2 years to, evaluate all these minor leaguers. He doesn't have time for that. You got Nimmo, Lindor, and McNeil under contract. Most likely have Pete Alonso for long-term as well. You can't transition. You can't evaluate for 2-3 years while trying to compete with a core that is getting older. Because why give those contracts? Because it doesn't make sense if you're not coming in here and trying to evaluate as quickly as possible. Because if this team shocks the world in the first half and plays extremely well, Met fans will be clamoring for moves at the deadline. But those same Met fans didn't want to trade any of those prospects during the offseason. And I see a lot of them in the chat right now. So you'll be the first ones to say, hey, we need an arm. We need a bat. Well, you just told me right now that you didn't want to trade prospects. Because if you half-ass an offseason and then you go in to half-ass a deadline, guess what's going to happen? You're going to half-ass the season, and then you're going to have what you had in 2022 with the Mets. When they half-assed the deadline and didn't go all in with a team that was one of the best teams in baseball, you get Darren Ruff, you get Tyler Naquin, and you get Daniel Vogelback. That's the point. That's what I continue to keep on saying. Stop being a prospect hugger. I'm not saying you can't use, the prospects that you want to have. You got to have prospects that are expendable, because you're never going to make your team better when it counts the most. Because I think the Mets organization and executives were shocked how good the Mets were in the first half of 2022, and they did not know how to pivot to an all-in mentality, and it hurt them. Because people are like, oh, Josh Bell wasn't good for the Padres. Okay, that doesn't mean he wouldn't have been good for the Mets. JD Martinez didn't get traded. Why? Because they were looking for a certain prospect or two for the Red Sox. They wanted to see what they can get. If the Mets were willing to give up what they needed to, who knows what JD Martinez could have done with the Mets? I know he had a back problem later on with Boston, but that doesn't mean that back problem would have flared up with the Mets. Right? You can't tell me that what they gave up for Ruff, JD Davis, and 3 other prospects, you could have used that for another player. The problem is they pinpointed the wrong guys and try to squeak through, thinking that they were good enough to just squeak through with okay bats, and it hurt them as soon as Marte went down, and there was no alternative. And I think that's the problem that we're falling into, because too many times when you half-ass a deadline, the team actually realizes that too. You don't think the team realizes, wow, do they really believe in us? You didn't make a move to make us better. Do you really believe in us? That weighs on their mind a little bit as well. And I think the pressure also got to them as well when it came to that point, when the Braves were rolling down, coming down their throat. So that's the way I see it, Chris. And I understand that. I'm sorry. I'm trying to look at the chat, Chris, if you want to say anything what I just said, but I'm trying to read. I keep on seeing the chats that people keep on saying, check your Twitter. But I don't.
No, I agree with you. I mean, there's nothing on Twitter. There's nothing on Twitter. People are lying to you. There's no reliable sources coming out on Twitter about Yamamoto. We're not going to see it tonight. I highly doubt we're going to see it tonight. And I completely agree with everything that you've been saying. I mean, Yamamoto's situation is what it is. If he chooses the Yankees, he chooses the Yankees. That means he has been a lifelong, proponent of the Yankees. He grew up a Dodgers fan, was enamored by the Yankees, and it is what it is. I mean, I'm so sick and tired at this point of talking about Yamamoto, because like his situation really is unique, and we've never really seen a player make this much money to this grand of money coming out of Japan. I don't know what to say at this point. Like, I truly do believe, and I will say this till I'm blue in the face, that the Mets are going to make the highest offer. Whether he chooses to sign with the Mets is a different question, and it would have to have external factors in that scenario for him to do so. Because I can guarantee you this, the New York Yankees are not offering Yoshinobu Yamamoto the highest AAV. They are not offering the highest total contract money in terms of millions of dollars. That is going to be Steve Cohen. Brian Cashman literally said it himself. It is going to be hard to outbid Steve Cohen for Yoshinobu Yamamoto. It is going to be hard. And that came from the Yankees GM himself. The Yankees don't have what it takes in monetary value to outbid the New York Mets. The New York Mets, listen, okay, this is what I'm going to say. Because I really am sick of the whole narrative about the New York Mets, because the New York Mets have been underdogs in the MLB for so long. As long as the New York Mets have Steve Cohen as their owner, nobody, not a single other team in this league, not the Yankees, not the Dodgers, not the Red Sox, nobody in this league will outbid the New York Mets for a free agent or incoming prospect free agent that they truly want to sign. Nobody will do that. And that is the same thing in this Yoshinobu Yamamoto situation. The Mets will be the highest bidders. If they do not land Yoshinobu Yamamoto, it's not going to be because they did not offer the highest contract. People in the chat, if you truly think the Yankees and Steinbrenner encashment are going to offer a higher $1 million value to Yoshinobu Yamamoto than the New York Mets are, you don't know ball. You simply don't know ball. You don't know ball. The New York Mets can afford anybody that they want to. That's the new day and age. This is not the Wilpon era. The whole prestigeness is a different question. Rob, I know you know this. Like, we can talk about this till we're blue in the face. That's something that the Mets have to offer or they have to work on. But in terms of the Mets offerings, nobody else can compare. Nobody else can compete with the monetary value. Nobody. Not even the Dodgers. I promise you that. Well, so I'm just sick of people not acknowledging that. And like I said, the money is not always going to be 100% of the decision-making aspect for these free agents. It's not. I understand that it's not. But the Mets are always going to be in play because of Steve Cohen's wallet.
Correct.
That's 100% a fact.
Yeah, and by the way, for people talking in the chat, right? What have the Texas Rangers won prior to 2023? Right? Why did Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Jacob deGrom, why did they go? Those guys go there to a franchise that never won a World Series? What history did they have? All they care about there is the Dallas Cowboys. Have you been to Arlington, Texas? Nobody talked about the Rangers at all until last year over there, right? Did you see their parade? Wasn't very big, right? So let's not talk about players are only going to go to teams that have history and winning cultures and legacy, because the Rangers had none. They had less than the Mets. So why did those guys go there? You know why? Because they paid them the most money. Very simple. Jacob deGrom saying that, oh, I went there because I want to win championships. Everybody laughed at him. Okay, it happened, but nobody believed it. Corey Seager didn't go there to win championships because their history. They went there because they gave him the most money. Same thing with Semien. So same thing with Eovaldi. He took the most money, right? It was good signings. It was good trades that they made at the deadline. And I think the trade deadline was more important for the Rangers than their offseason signings. So I come back to this, right? Somebody brought up 25th about you don't trade prospects unless it's for great players. That's not true, right? And only anybody wants to talk about is Yoenis Cespedes in 2015. But everybody forgets the first trade that meant business for the Mets. Kelly Johnson, Juan Uribe. It told players on that team that the Mets were going for it, that the Mets were bringing in veterans to bring around this team. You know who was their next signing? Tyler Clippard, who helped their bullpen. And then it was Yoenis Cespedes at the last minute, right? So it's not always trading prospects for great bats, great arms. It's the smaller move sometimes that is important as well, right? We forget about the smaller moves that meant more, because Yoenis Cespedes wasn't good in the playoffs. You know who was good? Tyler Clippard. Couple of pinches for Kelly Johnson. Juan Uribe hit big hits during the season, during the second half. All that mattered. Tyler Clippard even saved some games for the Mets during the regular season in the second half. So all of that matters. I'm not just saying trade prospects for some Joe Schmo and you're going to give up, Jet Williams and Alex Ramirez for, a mid-level reliever. I'm not saying that. But small moves matter, probably sometimes more important than a big move. Because Jordan Montgomery wasn't a big trade to the Rangers. Everybody was like, okay, that's nice. Yet Montgomery was their best pitcher in the postseason, Hayden. So it comes down to the right trades at the right time, big or small. It's the right trades at the right time that matter. You have to pinpoint exactly what your team needs at that moment, right? The Rangers were falling apart. They were choking away the division, yet they made the right moves at the deadline. Now, they didn't know they were the right moves until they won the World Series, but they made the moves, and they actually gave up prospects that mattered, that they could have used this year or next year. Yet, Hayden, they still did it. And they weren't even as good as the Mets during the season as the Mets were in 2022, that the Rangers were in 2023. Basically, it was very similar because the Astros were right down their throats, catching up to them the same way the Braves were with the Mets in 2022. Yet the Rangers did not care what they had to give up to get better, Hayden. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a difference, I think, on how roster construction goes. And, look at the Texas Rangers. And, I mean, essentially,
Hayden, you're feeling like a robot, buddy.
how do I say?
Yeah, it's all right. No problem. Yeah. Good. Yeah, guys. So let's get Hayden back for a second.
He sounded a little bit robotic, didn't he?
Yeah. I do a Yamamoto sign.
I thought it was just my feed.
Yeah, I thought it was for a second too, but then I saw the people in the chat sounding the same way. So I'm okay.
Yeah,
all right. So again, there's still hasn't been much talking about. I'm waiting for Hayden to come back. Oh, Hayden's back. Hold on.
No, I mean. Oh, they're hitting this.
Sound better?
Yeah, you sound good. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, you can say what you're saying.
Yeah, I think essentially what I was just saying was it was a difference of philosophy. Yeah, my laptop's almost dead, so that's probably why it's doing this. But essentially, it's just a difference in philosophy. I mean, the Mets and Padres, we saw it in baseball, tried to do what the Rangers essentially succeeded in. Whether it's spending all this money and, will it bring them a World Series or not? And that's what the Rangers did. Keep in mind, it took them a couple years. They signed Simeon and Seager, and then they finished with a 70-win season, and then they went all in with signing DeGrom and a couple other assets for their rotation of bullpen, and then obviously acquiring a couple pieces at the deadline, and that's what really gave them the push. So, and it was a mixture. I mean, you looked at the Rangers, it was a mixture of pretty much purchasing guys at a high-level contract. Few of the guys on their team were, homegrown, prospects. Majority of them were purchased through free agency or purchased when they were at a very young age. But, yeah, I mean, I guess when it comes down to it, it's just, I guess, a difference in philosophy. And I mean, right now the Mets need to be on the page of a mixture of everything. It's good to go, and I look at the Atlanta Braves, and I know a lot of Mets fans hate the Braves, but I applaud them. I mean, really, you look at it right now, and they built a team, and that's what the Mets need to do. And I'm hoping that is what David Stearns' goal is, to build a team that has a roster built around, 50-50, whether it's drafting guys through the international draft or the MLB draft, purchasing guys in free agency, trades. I mean, that's how you build a great team. And that is what, a team like the Atlanta Braves did. I mean, they have their homegrown talent with guys like Albies and Acuna, and then trading guys to get, like Olsen, obtaining guys in free agency, whatever. So, we'll see, at the end of the day, that's going to be David Stearns' goal. And I'm right now, I guess with Mets fans, it's hard to be confident. It's hard to be positive. But, in the process, we trust, essentially.
Look, I can assure you, I think we like Hayden just said, we're not a confident. Oh, I think my cat wanted to make an appearance. Listen, we're not a confident fan base. I mean, I don't think we ever have. Did we get a little bit excited in 2022? Yeah, because it never happens. So if we get a little bit overexcited, absolutely. But you okay? Okay, sorry. He was looking at me like I was nuts. Yeah, I know. We got problems, right? We got problems. So listen, guys, I see it like this. The fact of the matter is, if you don't get Yamamoto, is it the end of the world? No, sorry, my cat's scratching the hell out of me. It's not the end of the world. It sucks, and we'll see how the Mets pivot. I think it's more important to see how they pivot. If they pivot to go crazy and get Imanaga and, I don't know, Montgomery, I don't think a lot of people would be so disappointed. People wouldn't be probably as excited as Yamamoto because that's the big fish. I see it as this. It's hard to understand, like, being a Mets fan if you're not a Mets fan. Yankee fans, especially if you're under 30 years old, you never seen losing. Like, you've had winning seasons year after year after year. All right, you might have missed the playoffs every now and then, but guess what? You have winning seasons. You had a September that was important. Making a wild card, winning the division, almost making the playoffs, definitely making the playoffs. Until you know how we feel or care, you clearly don't, but you control all you want. You're not going to hurt us as much as this team hurts us. Like, it's obvious. Like, we've been beaten down, we've gotten up, and we got sucker punched. That's how a Met fan is. And I think everybody would agree in the chat, in the stream right now, that's how we are, right? We are pessimists. We're pessimistically optimistic. I think that's the best way to put it in any scenario, right? I don't think anybody was confident we were going to get Scherzer or trade for Lindor or even get Yamamoto. If the Mets get Yamamoto, the confidence that all the Met fans are going to have on Twitter, and obnoxiously, and I can completely understand that, the confidence will go back up a little bit because it shows that, all right, Cohen isn't worried about spending money and will be the biggest offer. And that matters in a case like next offseason with Soto, who is going to be a free agent, with better free agents on the market. So whoever wants to chime in on that aspect of it,
listen.
In general.
Yeah, listen, before we get into all that, make sure if you all are in the chat, hit that thumbs up button on any channel that you're listening to. Hit that thumbs up button. Rob and I thoroughly appreciate it. That's first and foremost. Second of all, isn't it refreshing that we're able to be these high-end bidders for these high-end prospect talents like Yoshinobu Yamamoto? This would have never happened 5 or 6 years ago. A premier talent coming out of the KBO or the Japanese league. The Mets would have never, ever been in on this market of $300+ million. This is refreshing if you're a New York Mets fan. I hope everyone in the chat that might sympathize with the Wilpons takes that into consideration. This would never happen under the Wilpon era. That's what I'll say first and foremost. And like I said, the decision and what the actual decision is going to be is one thing, and that may or may not have outside driving factors outside of the money that Steve Cohen's going to be putting up on the table. There could be a fit discussion. There could be XYZ. He wants to be a Yankee. He wants to be a Dodger because he grew up a Dodgers fan. There could be all those factors, right? Which the Mets cannot control internally. But the fact of the matter is that they are top 3 in this discussion alone. This is not something that I want to preach in terms of loser mentality, but the Mets being serious contenders for these top free agents, whether it's Yoshinobu Yamamoto or anybody else for that matter, is refreshing. So I think that a lot of people in the chat lose sight of that fact. And the clock doesn't stop on that fact at Yoshinobu Yamamoto. That keeps on going in the next offseason, at the I guess the tail end of this offseason. It keeps on going. Steve Cohen's checkbook is always open for business. And that's one thing that you can count on. And so, like I said, if you are a Mets fan and you don't appreciate that in this new era of Mets baseball, I don't know what to tell you at this point.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, like we if the Wilpons were here, we would have never got Senga. We would have never got Scherzer. We would have never got Verlander. We would never be in discussion on any of these players that we're talking about right now. I mean, Montgomery wouldn't be an option. Snell wouldn't be an option. Giolito would be an option. And very, very, other lower level players would be an option. And that would be our offseason every single year. And I know people are talking about, when you brought up the Wilpons, and now people are talking about Bernie Madoff. Listen, guys, Bernie Madoff and the Wilpons, specifically Fred Wilpon, were extremely good friends. They were extremely close, right? I was all over that stuff back then. The Wilpons, I'm sorry, I don't care how naive you might think they are. You're going to tell me they did not know when they were basically one of the biggest earners with that Ponzi scheme during the Madoff Ponzi scheme scandal. They were one of the biggest earners with that. A lot of yes, Gad.
Hold on 1 second. Martino tweeted out per the chat here. Let's see here. This is a classic Andy Martino quote here. 5 minutes ago. Yamamoto, quote unquote, Yamamoto negotiations intensified late Thursday. The Dodgers and Yankees are in strong position, and the Mets, not out yet, are clinging on to a shred of hope. Andy Martino, ladies and gentlemen, is a loser. I'll say that once and for all.
Exactly. This is what he's been going back and forth on this whole time, right? He knows the people who follow him more than anybody else are Mets fans. So to get people reacting to, clicking his articles, because it is an article attached to it, by the way. It's not just a tweet. He wants you to click on it. He wants you to react. That's what he's doing. Yankee fans are not going to react to Andy Martino. They're more on the Jack Curry and bandwagon when they listen to their stuff when it comes to reporters. So again, this is something that we've heard for weeks now. It's the same thing. So again, there is no way Yamamoto is not going to call up Steve Cohen for a final offer. Now, will Cohen say, congratulations, good luck with whatever team he signs with, not the Mets? Yeah, but he's going to make the final offer. Again, why haven't we heard any offers or any amount from the Dodgers or the Mets? Yet we heard something about the Yankees offer. We don't know what. All we hear is significant, aggressive, substantial. That's all I've heard. Where are these reporters finding out the offers? How can we hear all these type of years and numbers for all these other players throughout the years? We don't hear nothing. We heard nothing on Ohtani, and we heard nothing on Yamamoto except aggressive offers. What the fuck does that mean?
But also, when we talk about Ohtani in terms of Ohtani never sort of contacting or his agents contacting the New York Mets, if, like Ethan just said here in the chat here, he says if he doesn't, and he referring to Yoshinobu Yamamoto, doesn't give Cohen the chance to match or exceed the offer, I'm going to be pissed. If Yoshinobu Yamamoto doesn't give the Mets that chance, do you really want Yoshinobu Yamamoto on the New York Mets? We have spent all this time talking about Ohtani never wanted to be a New York Met. Do you want a player that's not wanting to be in the New York Mets? Like, I get their premier talent. There's so much that the Mets can do if a player doesn't want to come to the New York Mets. And that has all the other external factors associated with it. I want players that are going to want to play in Queens. They're going to want to play at Citi Field and rep the New York Mets. I want those players. If they're not willing to do that, then I'm sorry. No matter how good they are, see you later. The Mets can build a brand elsewhere without those players, and they can recruit free agents outside of those players for future years. Yep. You need to want to be a New York Met first and foremost to put on that uniform and to earn that contract. So if Yoshinobu Yamamoto is seriously not even giving the Mets a chance, like you said, Ethan, or just speculating, this is just quote unquote speculating, then do we really want him in the first place? I really urge all Mets fans to think about that. That's first and foremost.
Yeah. Hayden, you were going to say something? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I don't. Okay. Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Hayden's laptop's gonna die out. So Hayden, if you gotta go, it's cool. Yeah. Listen, I completely understand. I agree with you with that. Listen, we could talk about players. You want players here or there that want to be here. Again, we don't know everything that's going on. This is what's frustrating. Again, the teams are doing a really good job. If they're really keeping it close to the vest and these reporters can't find anything about that, then, what can they do? They just have to put stuff out there. But I truly think that I don't see any reason why they would continue to keep the Mets in here and not give them the final call. Because I think they would have been out of it already. Because if the Dodgers or Yankees, who really want them, can drive up the prices on their own, they got the money to do so. So they don't need Cohen to drive up the price over and over again. They can keep on calling the Dodgers and the Yankees back and forth for hours, or have them both on the phone screaming at each other for offers. They don't need the Mets. The same reason why Ohtani didn't need the Mets or the Yankees to get $700 million from the Dodgers. It's just that's just a fact. Like, again, I appreciate the fact that we're a beaten down fan base. So anytime we see a player go elsewhere, it's because of the Mets history, which is laughable. Because again, players go for the most money, no matter what the team is. Again, Ohtani went to the Angels, and what history did they have? You know, he could have went to another team on the West Coast. He didn't. You know, the Giants were really good at the time. You know, the Dodgers are always the Dodgers. So I don't know, guys. Let's finish it up with this, because we're just gonna go in a circle with the whole tweets that are popping up all over the place. So, Hayden, your final thoughts before your laptop dies. Do you think the Mets are out? Do you think the Mets are getting them? Do you think this is a lot of smoke and mirrors, and we're still not going to hear nothing until probably tomorrow? We shall see. But Hayden, what do you think? Your final thoughts?
Does my audio sound okay?
Yeah, it sounds pretty good. A little low, but you're good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I am so done with the Yamamoto. That's all I see on Twitter. I mean, honestly, my response, it's short and simple. I get it. You invested a lot of time in him this offseason. It would be unfortunate if they didn't get him, considering most likely this isn't why they're spending, is so they could land Yamamoto. But I mean, that's just how, you know, MLB free agency goes sometimes. Try and sign him. Like I said, it's all you could do. You know, that way they could, you know, that way you could say Cohen and Stearns did their part. That's all you could do. Yeah, otherwise we'll see how it goes. Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. Videos, streams, all that great stuff. Trying to hit 900 subscribers. So like, comment, subscribe on all the channels and platforms you are currently watching this on. And yeah, LFGM, let's go Mets, and hopefully let's stay positive.
Yes, positive. That's all we got. Chris, go ahead. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think Yoshinobu Yamamoto, like I said at the top of the stream, I do think that the Mets are more serious contenders than a guy like Andy Martino will give him credit for. I do foresee the Mets signing Yoshinobu Yamamoto. If money is the deciding factor, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, make no mistake about it, will be a New York Met. If indeed it is true that there are external factors in terms of wanting to play with the likes of Ohtani or wearing those pinstripes with the Yankees is true, there's nothing the Mets can do at that point, even if they have the highest offer for Yamamoto. But I do think Steve Cohen will have the highest offer for Yamamoto, and I think he ends up being a Met. Now, like I said, the New York Mets are still a ways away out in terms of being a championship contending team outside of Yamamoto. We have the DH options here. There's a lot of DH options to have. Justin Turner is a name in terms of a one-year deal to fill in for the DH spot. The New York Mets already have Mark Vientos for that DH spot. Jock Peterson is another name that I like. Jorge Soler, Teoscar Hernandez. Take your choice. The Mets still need a DH for the 2024 season and beyond. So the Mets have a lot of work to do, even outside of Yoshinobu Yamamoto. But the market is still in flux because of this whole Yoshinobu Yamamoto sort of buildup and sort of roadblock. So we'll continue to monitor when his decision comes. Honestly, with the amount of reports that we're seeing, I do think that decision is going to be more imminent than not. And that original timeline of Christmas and before even Christmas hits is feasible for Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So let's go Mets. Almost to 300 subscribers on the channel. I thoroughly appreciate the support. True Mets Talk podcast on my channel. Make sure you're tuning into those episodes. I appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. Get me to 300 by the end of the year. Let's go Mets. I appreciate you, Rob. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Get Hayden to 900. Get Chris 300. And a tweet just popped up, Jack Curry, that I was just talking to you about. He said the Yankees are still involved in the pursuit of Yamamoto. So that does sound like what Manny Martino said, but it sounded less confident than what Martino wrote. So I don't know. So, all right, guys. So get Chris to 300, get Hayden to 900, guys. Let's see what happens. It seems like more people are believing that it's going to be finalized tomorrow. So Friday, of course, we're going to be up and about, ready to bitch and moan if he doesn't become a Met, and be very obnoxious if he does become a Met, because we'll let everybody hear it. So with that said, guys, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Hayden. Thank you, everybody in the stream, on the channels. Once again, guys, thank you again. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. Have a great night. Mets Hot Stove out. Good night, guys.
Let's go Mets.
Hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell, give 'em a hand, and let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Come on and meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets